and the failing brain chemistry, failing everything chemistry, right? So it's all connected. And so a common theme, other than Kathy Mills when I have her on, but even so, she healed herself from stage 4 brain cancer. And she did that not through just Western medicine, but she did it through like many of the same things that I did, which was, yoga and meditation, going vegetarian, things like that, right? Because I was told that I was not going to be able to walk. I was told that I was going to live life in a wheelchair. I was told that, and really fast. And as a matter of fact, I was in tears practically every day just walking down the stairs to get my son to school, right? These kinds of things. It caused a real, and that kind of was what one of the things that led me here. But anyways, going to this vacuum, right? This is what gives way to many concepts that we have, like climate denial, like the idea that wearing a mask is not a common sense thing, but it's a image thing, or it's a patriotism thing, or a freedom thing, or something like this. And we don't think bigger, right? Because we're operating on this knee-jerk reaction of anger, which at the bottom line of that is fear, right? So something that's common sense and just basic self-preservation then becomes a politicized thing, and large amounts of Americans, due to pollution of the mind through our food, through our media, through the things that we consume, like video games and comic books and things like that. And that's not to say that these things are bad or anything, but we didn't think about the consequences. We didn't think about where that was going to get us in 25 years when we started reading them as kids when we were young, right? We didn't think that while we're reading this stuff and getting pounded by images on TV and negative news constantly, negative reprogramming about our beauty and our looks, and how these things were going to stack and stack and stack and affect us on the individual level. But what's really important is that those individual the society is made of individuals. And so what happens is you eventually get a sick society, one that can't tell its ass from a hole in the ground, doesn't know up, down, from left and right, can't defend itself with any real logic or understanding. And so it gives way now when you remove that trust, when you start to see certain things, and media has directed and purposely directed things to make it look like, oh, it's one side or the other. See, that's the other thing that we get with that. We get a one side or the other, the football mentality, I call it, where it's like, my team's better and whatever, it causes fights. It does, all this nonsense like that. But the underlying thing is that what it really causes is division. See, and we don't tie that together enough, right? And there's some sports that do that more than others, but it has become that way just because of the way how we have identified and identity politics, right? And the way how the media has got us so confused and so discombobulated that we don't know what's right or what's wrong anymore. And the biggest part, the biggest compass that each of us have is within us. That compass is our spiritual connection to earth. It's our spiritual connection to source, to universe, to the big, God, to whatever you want to call it, right? And that connection that we have not only to each other, but like I've said before, that connection that we have to everything that has a vibration, to understand that if it's got a vibration, at some point inside, it has some sort of life, whether we understand it or not. If it's got a vibration, it's got that God particle in it. It's got vibration. It's got life, whether we understand it or not. It doesn't matter if it's a rock or a shoe or a phone or whatever. It doesn't matter if it's your neighbor. It doesn't matter if it's your friend, your mom, your uncle, your sister, your whatever, right? Or your dog or your these birds, right? Doesn't matter. So understanding that and starting to open ourselves up and then become teachable again. See, that is the problem. See, a lot of people, they've just got their arms folded and, they don't even understand like basic concepts, right? They understand the basic concept that somebody else has told them. They understand the basic concept that somebody on media or some family has spoken negatively about, but have they actually done the time to actually understand what that is, right? And so, case in point, like the difference between Trump and Biden, there isn't any. There isn't any. The only thing that's different, and uh, believe it or not, whatever, all I can do is present other alternate ideas, and then you can start to look for yourself what happened, what is the real difference. I mean, like case in point, look, we have a border wall going up, or the repealing of the making abortion illegal, right? These have primarily been what we thought were right wing agenda ideas, right? And yet, here, this supposedly, if you ask most people who are a Trump supporter or most people who think like and identify with, oh, I'm a right wing kind of Christian type of person, right? That is who would support these ideas. Yet here we have somebody who they think is a socialist, which could not be further from the truth, called a communist or whatever you think Joe Biden is. He's not that. Okay. He's more right of Reagan than Reagan was. And they have a category called I'm a Reagan Republican. So if you're a Reagan Republican and you're looking at Joe Biden policy and Joe Biden moves, then you must understand that he's not even a Democrat. Well, we don't have Democrats anymore. We have a single conglomerate right wing corporation disguising itself as two political parties with opposite scripts, pointing to the same lie, keeping the same people divided and confused and unable to defend themselves against any of the crap that's coming out. So it gives way for room like flat earth. Come on, even the ancients knew about our solar system. They knew about these things, right? We can't anymore because we've lost simply our trust. And once you lose trust, and on top of it, your brain is polluted, your pineal gland is clogged. You have no real way to connect to the truth. Because let me tell you something: truth has a vibration. Okay, integrity has a vibration. Abundance has a vibration. Okay. Love has the highest vibration. Well, actually, it's peace, but we're splitting hairs there. But all of these things have vibration, and I will have all these charts that I'll be bringing on and stuff. I'm still new to this. I'm getting go, but what I was getting at is like we have no way to distinguish, and people think that capitalism is some great mechanism, and really it's crap. Okay. And we see it failing, and as if I was to be honest, I would say it failed probably in 2000, when, see, people also can't remember, right? They think that only vote rigging happens on the Democrat side. They forget about the election in 2000 when the rigging started. See, that was when they found out what they could get away with, right? They pushed that envelope. That was when George W. Bush got elected. And he did that by way of Florida, where guess who just happened to be the governor of that state? It was Jeb Bush. That's also when all of the funky stuff started happening with every state's uh, voting process. That was their testing ground. They found out that, hey, you know what? If we cause enough confusion and make it really difficult for people to show up to vote, and we close locations and don't tell anybody and drag it out and have to do all these recounts and have to go to court just to, get approval for a recount and all that stuff, that people will eventually stop. And then they also found out that the compromise, remember, we compromise, and which is actually a good thing, but they've weaponized it against us, just like they've weaponized everything against us. Okay. So people forget that that's where that all started. And every election since has been more and more rigged and set up. And in 2016, all of a sudden, they could only rig it for so much, right? And it actually got to a point where we could have overturned that. Okay. But they knew that Americans with limited intelligence, right? And it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on, if you eat the same food, if you watch the same kind of stuff, trust and believe our intelligence as a whole has plummeted. Okay. There's a lot of things that point to that. Um, but a lot of that, I believe, is due to our food and things like glyphosate and everything. It's caused bee collapse and you name it. But anyways, so our compass has been broken. Our antenna has been bent and clogged, right? We have no way to connect, right? So it's up to us as individuals to turn that around, right? Because they figured that out, and ever since they've just been pushing the envelope. And in 2016 it got close, and that's when things like the Russian propaganda bullshit started. That's when they started saying, oh, China's interfering and all this stuff, right? That's when all those fun and games come out. Because the other thing is the military industrial complex and the United States always needs someone to blame, right? And they've trained us to do that too, myself included, man. It was hard. It is hard sometimes to get out of that blame mode, that desire to go into the victim. Well, it wasn't my fault, getting defensive about bullshit that you have no reason to get defensive over in the first place. But we do it because we've been trained well repeatedly over and over and over and over. And it's only when something traumatic enough happens to break that cycle, or just from within, you find a desire to actually, just that one little time when you go, something's not right here. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out. And not in the Sherlock Holmes kind of way, which is, I was guilty of that when I first started getting into it, in 2016 when Bernie was coming. I was one of the earlier Bernie supporters, and very active in calling people and trying to get them to show up to vote, and the delegates and all that stuff. But came to a point where I was like, wait a minute. Number one, I'm making myself crazy, right? I'm angry, right? And I started to realize one of the tactics that they use is a hypnosis tactic. Russell Brand talked about this the other day. And what they'll do, and now that I know hypnosis and I've learned all this stuff so I can heal people and be a healer and a coach and all of this stuff, right? And heal myself, most importantly, because that had to happen first. And that's where they will present a fact, a fact, a fact, undisputable fact, sky is blue, um, windows are made out of glass, or, something like that. And then they will put something vague and suggestive as the third thing. The one that Russell Brand pointed out was about when what they're trying to do to Rumble over in the UK by squelching and shutting them down and taking them off every platform over there, right? um, how then they go into, oh, and the something about vaccines. I'll have to pull it up. I got to pull all that stuff up. Um, and this is a hypnosis technique. Okay, this is how you get into reframing it's NLP, right? It's reframing things that you're thinking and your ideas about yourself usually are smoking, right? So you get into that mode where you're in that that meditative state, right? And then you change, right? Well, they do that with everything that you read. And it happens also on independent media, which is why it is utmost importance that as many people as possible can start to do these things and connect again to source, to God, to whatever, you know. Um, I, I, I don't know if anybody knows about the differences between religion and spirituality, right? There's a couple that stick out to me. And one of the reasons why I mention that is because that is one of the tactics that have been used to keep things going crazy and keep people divided and unable to sit down and have a simple conversation. And that is religion. It is for people who are afraid to go to hell, right? And spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. Okay. The other one that I think of is like in religion, it's more about whose God is right, right? Who's more powerful or whatever. And even if people aren't saying it, they're judging each other over their faith or their belief. Where with spirituality, everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. Like I pray to gods I wasn't grown up with. I still pray also to God that I grew up with. I still also I pray to energies and I meditate to energies and you know there's all right. There's different gods, there's different deities, there's different angels, all that stuff, and in spirituality there's room for all of it, you know. And you start to understand that anything that somebody is telling me that causes me to want to be angry at another person or that wants me to hurt another person or has me afraid that they're going to take resources that I am entitled to and they're not just because of where I was born, any of those things, right? Or telling a woman if she can or cannot have an abortion, or understanding that it's not about uh, anything that they've made it about. It's about quality of how do we go to the next level. Wolves, if there's a shortage of food or something's going on, they don't breed. Humans do. Okay. Now, you don't have, we shouldn't have to have abortion. We shouldn't have to have these things. But until we start learning and operating on a more enlightened level, on a more conscious, responsible, where we actually think not about what do I want right now, instead think of what am I going to do after I get this or after I do this, right? What's that part look like? Before I make the decision to go ahead in recovery, we call it playing the tape through, right? See, we don't do that stuff enough anymore because we've lost our way with that. Okay. People used to, there used to be more intention thought, right? We used to have to grow our food. We knew that it took this much months to get a crop of tomatoes. We knew how to get ourselves into our garden and actually do so. And it wasn't just a female thing. My grandfather, he was a tank battalion cat. He worked with General Patton, okay, in World War II. He gardened, okay. He did all the veggies, okay. So to think of these things the way we do is just it's backwards, right? And then at the same time, our society has pushed this agenda of, like what they call tough talk, right? This toxic masculine idea that, I mean, you go to a football game, even I will stand for the stupid national anthem just because, you know what? I don't really feel like getting into it or having a bad time because the guy next to me just can't possibly enjoy a game because I sat because you know what? I don't support war. Has nothing to do with supporting the troops. Those are two different things. But in our country, they have tied it together and it causes people to get all upset. And I'm just like, you want to support the troops? Tell your kid to come home. Straight up, man. Tell them to come home. But, anyways, so that is the whole point, right? Is to find ourselves back into ourselves, right? Like along my spiritual journey, I realized how much of these thoughts, these belief systems, these uh, crap that I've inherited doesn't even come from me. This stuff that I'm talking about now, this is stuff that I kind of knew when I was 8 years old, 5 years old, 9 years old, right? I knew back then that we all went back to what I thought was like we all go back to the sun, right? That's the source of all life. That must be where we are. Now I think it's even past all that, right? But because I knew that we were energy. And it was like, I think it was when I first found out that we all have an electric current in our body, right? And I instantly knew, oh shit, we're electricity. That means anything that has electricity. And sure enough, they started talking about trees having electricity and this and that and the other thing, which is why like climate denial is also one of the things that number one, it is something that I'm passionate about. I started a soil business, not for the soil, but for the climate and also kind of taking the back door into a spiritual awakening for a larger amount of people just by giving them a job that gives them a paycheck for the soul that also gets their hands back into the dirt, that also sets up a thing where I could get people off the street out of homelessness and get them educated and cleaned up and more than just a rehab and see you later bye, right? Actually giving them a purpose and a life. And if they want to stay, hey, that's great. If they want to go off, then now they can afford to do whatever they want, right? And they have that dignity and that self-esteem back, right? Not just giving them a shower one day, right? And maybe a homeless shelter with all kinds of crazy rules that there's no way that they can, you got to understand that to be in that situation, you've got a lot of messed up thinking and a lot of hurt emotions and a lot of stuff to heal. And that takes time. We just don't do that. Everything has been cut. It's all about, right here, right now. Most people, they exist on a level of as long as my life is okay and my taxes are this, not past this, then I'm happy. But if somebody's going to talk about this or that or the other thing and it affects me, then I'm against it. And they don't even know what they're against because nothing is what it seems anymore. And the only way you can tell what it is by getting this all right. By getting this all right. So I want to play a clip. It's from Lee Camp today. And let me see here. And well, I don't think it was originally today. It was actually on the BTN network. And hold on. Let's see if I can do this right. Okay, here we go. There we go. It's this one. Okay. And he talks about this stuff with somebody who's actually in China. And this show has no set host, right? It rotates hosts. and they rotate topics and stuff like that. And this one came on today. And Lee is a gentleman that I'm planning on having on here um, soon. And this is just something that stuck out to me that gets to the point where Americans don't know what anything is anymore. And they don't know that there's no difference. They only know what they hear and see from other Americans, and it's not the same. So here, let's see. Let's play this and see what happens.
Communism and so that's true. Like Trump telling people to drink bleach, everybody's mocking Trump. But why you're not mocking the Democratic Party? They don't even know the difference between communism and socialism, right? Stupid.
Yeah, and it's by design. They want people confused because they don't want people to actually know what these things are and what they stand for. But Bernie Sanders was hugely popular before they, again, anti-democratically rigged the primaries against Bernie Sanders. They did everything they could, from confusing people about polling locations. The computers had a lot of question marks around them, changing the ballots, telling everyone in California to fill out what's called a provisional ballot, which is kind of like a fake ballot. So they did everything they could to rig the primaries against Bernie and all.
See, what he's talking about is what I'm talking about. Our whole system here is designed to keep us confused, in fear, and easily to manipulate through our emotions. Okay, that's all it is. Okay,
Ultimately, they stopped him, but they were very nervous.
I think they suppressed the report on Bernie Sanders, frankly, because you see Bernie is telling the truth about everything, and he had to go do Guardian. Not any U.S. media. He got to go do a Guardian. So possibly U.S. mainstream media, CNN or whatever, that some Chinese, they worship CNN a lot 10 years ago. Not anymore now because of Trump. Trump is yelling CNN fake news every day. So right now, CNN China, everybody says CNN, even the, I don't know, like farmer.
See, and that's actually a good thing. Trump did do a few good things. He got people to be involved that wouldn't have been. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, a lot of people who were what I call asleep or didn't care, didn't have an opinion, weren't going to get involved. Now people started to actually get involved.
In rural areas, it's CNN, fake news. I know that fake news, never believe, right? He made some contribution, at least exposing CNN or BBC as fake news. That's a good thing, right? We need.
Sorry about the birds, everybody.
To recognize that as a good side. But I think the mainstream media is basically just wasting huge amount of tremendous public attention.
See, and they're not just wasting public attention. They're wasting public manifestation power. They're wasting our energy. They're wasting our energy through emotions. They're wasting our energy through arguments. And one of the other things that I think is one of the stupidest inventions of the American system is, well, it wasn't invented here, but our way of just how we've gone about it is the debate, because it gives people who really, anytime you have somebody who's obviously debating something with a crappy intention behind it, and it's something that we know is inherently unjust or bad for humanity or bad for the climate, and can actually win, that's not a good thing to use. And they have really used that.
Circulating useless information all day long about something doesn't matter, and to audience that don't care at all. For example, the Florida building collapse, right? That case. And everybody is reporting how they rescue a small kitten and how the kitten is clean, how the kitten was meowing and everything. Lovely, adorable, but nobody cares. The rescue team didn't rescue even a single human being. And everybody's like, oh, rescued a cat, hooray. And this time the Hawaii Maui fire. It was like, rescue the other pets. How we help the pets? What about those human beings? What are you guys doing? Right? Just circulating all day. How to help pets?
See, and that is a larger problem with everything. Okay. Now he goes on to talk about, how, Americans, they think that there's some sort of difference between, well, he already covered that part, that, there's no, where is it? I think I might have missed it. Well, anyways, um, the point is that we really, as a society here in the Western culture, Western countries, we can't distinguish up or down, left or right. Okay. Some of us can. Some of us have more of that connection, if you will, or that part of our brain has been declogged, decluttered. You know, things like things that can help. Okay, these foods are all used to calcify and clog the pineal gland. Caffeine, sugar, nicotine, fluoride, onion, garlic, and pretty much any most medications. Okay, they all have calcifying effects on the pineal gland. The pineal gland is where you get your connection to things. It's where you get your logic and your reason, or at least a heightened ability. Your intuition comes from there, right? And your ability to not be manipulated by your emotions comes from there. Um, so yeah, that has those things have a bigger effect on us than we realize. And then you got to add in things like, if you don't eat organic, you're probably eating, glyphosate and all these things that cause all sorts of brain decay and nerve damages and cancers, and the list goes on. Which is why things like, also, they have gotten politicized and totally, man, like climate change, right? This is something that we don't get a do over. Okay. We don't get to a certain point and be like, oops, oh, well, I guess we screwed that up. You know, and some of the things that are happening already, if you can't notice it, if you don't understand it, man, I don't know what to tell you other than, please start meditating and clearing out the thoughts that you think you have in your brain that really aren't yours, because man, there is such a thing as divine consciousness, as source consciousness, as earth consciousness. Indians, Native Americans, excuse me, had this, right? This ability to know when it was time to migrate, right? Right now, you look at the migratory patterns of birds and it's all out of whack. And the only reason why is because of different climate stuff. Birds flying way out in the ocean, their sonar, their system is all jacked up, right? And yeah, that stuff happens sometimes, right? Naturally. Yeah, there is such thing as natural climate fluctuation. Yeah, but there's also man-made influenced climate. If you take and you make a terrarium, okay, and it's a sealed terrarium, and you drop in a cigarette or two, it causes that little tiny environment to have all kinds of issues. It's the same thing. It's just a bigger scale. And it'd be one thing if this was my individual planet or your individual planet, but it's not. This is our collective planet. This is our collective environment. This is our big, giant collective terrarium. And if you have a bunch of people just dumping crap into part of our water, eventually that water gets full of crap, right? it's not, you don't have to, it's not a high fence to climb over. It really isn't. It's really not a high fence to climb over. Yet here we are. Okay. And yeah, there's all sorts of other things, right? There's man influenced weather patterns, which I believe that we are messing with shit that we should not be, just like COVID, right? There's all these things. But let me tell you something. Are you going to wait and give them another fucking thing that they can manipulate and turn into a bigger catastrophe in order to cause more hardship and more suffering and more money transfer than you ever even thought? Bigger than COVID, right? Bigger than everything. Then the smart thing to do would have been like the same thing. Put on your fucking mask. I can tell you this. I know that every time that I wore that sucker for, and I wore it longer because I have all kinds of autoimmune, I didn't get sick at all with anything. Nothing. Okay. When I stopped wearing it, I started getting sick. Okay. So I still sometimes do. It doesn't mean that I like it. But another thing, all these arguments about, oh, it causes health problems and there's no evidence and da 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 da. I can tell you right now, if you were wearing a mask, you probably didn't get sick, right? If you weren't, then you probably did get sick with something, whether it's a cold or the flu or whatever, right? The other thing is that how do we attach that to something of being patriotic or being whatever image, okay? Because that's all that is image, right? And it's fear. And if you hang out with a bunch of people who are like, well, fuck that, I'm not no pussy or whatever, what does that tell you? I'm sorry, but like, that's shouldn't even happen. And, at this point, after everything that we've seen and been through, right? There's certain things that like someone like me isn't willing to do. I'm not willing to just openly give them another tragedy to weaponize against me any longer, right? And that's what that is. That's what that is. But we don't think that far ahead. We don't think that, gee, maybe it's our own fault for this stupid vaccine because we gave the whole thing legs to stand on because, oh shit, I fell for it. See, that's tough to admit. That's tough to say, well, shit, maybe I was wrong, right? And I don't know about you, but I've learned to err on the side of caution always with everything, whether it's relationships, whether it's employment, whether it's whatever it is. Err on the side of caution, focus on the positive, and keep moving forward. Do my meditations, do my prayers, understand that anything that I do to somebody else, I'm really doing to myself, right? And it's might be hard for some people at first, but after a while, it's actually the easiest thing to do because then you're just honest all the time. You don't have to worry about shit. You're just doing your thing and you're going. And if somebody says, oh, you're just being this or that, so what? I don't care. That's your problem, not mine. Anyways, we have got some awesome guests this week. I already did that little short. Kathy Mills, I'm interviewing her in a little bit. That will be out tomorrow. Then tomorrow I have Marjorie Hanson. As I said before, she is the man. We got a lot to talk about there. We're going to talk about Cornel West dropping out of the Green Party, which was foolish, in my opinion. But, that's his decision. We'll talk about Peter Dow and how his effect has had on that campaign. We'll probably talk about Robert Kennedy's campaign, and because he's also an independent. And then following that on Thursday, I will be interviewing Graham Elwood, the political vigilante, helping make Gotham great again. And he's a comedian. He's been involved in this stuff for a long time. Someone who I admire. And then followed that up by Stephen Peel, who is also a creative, spiritual kind of person like myself. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that I just talked about, but we're going to try to keep it narrowed down because I know I get a little bit all over the place. I'm really new at this, and there's so much ground to cover, and it's all related to one thing is related to the other. Okay. And that's my point. Okay. It's not about just politics anymore. It's not about just medicine anymore. It's not about just prayer and meditation anymore. It's not about any one thing. It's about how those things are all connected and how by making me better in tune, getting my truth compass so that I can recognize that vibration of truth. Okay. Because it'll resonate. It hits different. It hits like, oh, you don't have to think anymore because you can feel it. Matter of fact, it's better if you don't think because that's where all the fear is. Okay. That's where all the fear is. And that's what this show is really all about. It's about getting past, through, over, around, and leave the fear in the dust and empowering ourselves and becoming better versions of ourselves every day, learning something new, remaining teachable, helping other people, and helping our planet. Because when we help the planet, we're actually helping ourselves. See, we don't realize that. We don't understand that anymore. Anyways, I love you guys. I got to get ready for this. I haven't read anything, and I really want to read her book because anybody who can beat inoperable stage 4 brain cancer by doing things like meditation and yoga and healing and Reiki and CBD and changing your diet, that's somebody who I already love and care for deeply as a human spirit living in a human experience. That is what it's all about. Anyways, all right. I'll see you guys later. I might do another live tomorrow. I have no idea. Like I said, I'm new with all this stuff. The last one I did was all screwed up. And so I'm just making sure that the ship is going to run. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.